What is going on, Boxing Universe? It is your man, Tay, the Visionary, and you are now tuned in to Black Code Boxing. Welcome to my YouTube channel. If you all enjoyed my last fight breakdown, I know it was a minute ago, please smash that like button. I would definitely love to give you all this content full time. So go ahead and support the channel by hitting that subscribe. If you've never tuned into the channel before, go ahead and tune in today. Listen to this fight breakdown. We got a crazy welterweight showdown between champion Errol Spence Jr. and Terence Bud Crawford, right? So today I got with me the Errol Spence gloves. Well, not the Errol Spence gloves, but you all know the famous leather Everlast gloves that Errol Spence uses, that he has been using in his training videos. This is one of my favorite gloves. It took some getting used to, but this is authentic leather, and yeah, man. Shout out to Everlast. Shout out to Errol Spence. But you already know. With no further ado, let's get into the video. I am going to break down the prediction that I have for Terence Bud Crawford versus Errol Spence Jr. I got my notes up here. Shout out to these notes because this is going to help me get through this video. But I want to start off with a couple of key points here, and then at the end of the video, I'll give my prediction. I want to just go through some of the strengths of Errol Spence, the strengths of Terence Crawford, the weaknesses of Errol Spence, the weaknesses or setbacks or drawbacks of Terence Crawford. So I wouldn't necessarily say weaknesses. I take that back, but definitely some drawbacks that both fighters might actually be dealing with. So I definitely wanted to start off with this little known fact. Terence Crawford has never fought a southpaw in orthodox, right? So with that being said, I believe that this fight will be fought southpaw versus southpaw. You know, they're both two accurate punchers, two accurate fighters. I would definitely say Errol Spence is slightly more accurate with his punches than Terence Crawford is. But real quick, before I get into the strengths and weaknesses of each fighter, I definitely wanted to touch on my opinion of the game plan of Errol Spence, and I'm getting this based on some interviews that Errol Spence has done, some things that he has said, and some things that his longtime trainer Derrick James has said. Derrick James has stressed from the beginning, since this fight was made, that it's going to be a fight of basics, fundamentals, and consistency, and that's the reason he gave as to why Errol Spence is going to beat Terence Crawford. Basics, fundamentals, and consistency. So one thing that lets me know is that they're not going to try to do anything different. They're going to come with the same game plan that they've always come with. They're not going to rely too much on athleticism. And the truth is, I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but Derrick James and Errol Spence, they're banking on Terence Crawford slowing down because of his age. Now we know, as of me making this video, Errol Spence is 32 years of age. Terence Crawford is 35 years of age, I believe, going on 36. But they're banking on him slowing down because every interview that Derrick James does, he's always mentioning Terence Crawford's athleticism. He never talks about Terence Crawford's skill. So that just lets me know that's the best shot that they believe that they have against Terence Crawford, is just him slowing down. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but I do believe in the basics, the fundamentals, and the consistency. That's just something I've learned, being in the boxing gym over the last 6-7 years. Derrick James also said the fight would take place at Spence's pace, right? So this is what I'm getting. If they're banking on Errol Spence's fundamentals, right? Errol Spence's basics. If they're banking on Terence Crawford slowing down and his athleticism failing him, and it being fought at Spence's pace, then that tells me that they're not going to do any fill-out rounds. Maybe one fill-out round, maybe two at the most fill-out rounds. But they're finna get straight into it, and what they're planning on is just coming straight at Terence Crawford, non-stop pressure, spamming a jab as he normally does against fighters, to just get inside of him and break Terence Crawford down. And what they want to do is they want to keep Terence Crawford moving as long as he can and as early as he can, because they believe that eventually, because of Terence Crawford's age, that in the mid to later rounds, he will start to slow down because of his age, and that athleticism is going to fail him. So we can already expect from the jump that Errol Spence is coming out the gate on fire, boxing. I don't believe that he's going to give too much respect to Terence Crawford's power. And yeah, that's what it is, man. I've also seen an interview with Errol Spence calling himself Tim Duncan from the NBA. You know, Tim Duncan is a guy that relies heavily on the fundamentals, right? And he compared himself to Terence Crawford by calling Terence Crawford the Kevin Garnett of the NBA because of Kevin Garnett's athleticism. So that already puts you in the mindset of where they're going, right? With that game plan. But let's get into the breakdown. I definitely want to start with Errol Spence first. I want to definitely get into some of his powers, or his the pros and the advantages that he's going to have in this fight. And one of them is that Errol Spence, his jab is superb. That's the first thing we got to talk about. Errol Spence's jab is superb. Errol Spence spams the jab. What I mean is he throws a bunch of jabs, more jabs than any other welterweight I could think of at the moment. And I know that he's going to use that powerful spamming jab to offset Crawford. Errol Spence averages one jab every 5 seconds throughout the fight. And let's not forget to mention that as the fight goes on in the later rounds, he throws even more punches when he believes that he got his opponent hurt, or that when he believes that he's breaking his opponent down, which is what he normally does, right? So I think that jab could possibly serve Errol Spence very well in this particular fight. The next strength that I got for Errol Spence is those basics, those fundamentals, and those consistent pressure. And the reason why the basics is a strength, in my opinion, is because I do have boxing knowledge, boxing skills myself. I've been in the gym. I've sparred. I've even sparred a couple of pro fighters myself. And one thing that I've always learned from my trainer is that we rely heavily on the basics. The basics will help you outlast everybody else. When you get tired, all that athleticism and stuff goes out the window. If you're constantly dependent on your athleticism, your agility and stuff like that to move around the ring, then what happens when you get tired? If you don't have the basics and the fundamentals and the technique to fall back on, it's not going to serve you well. So I think that's one of the advantages that Errol Spence has. And honestly, regardless of who wins or loses this fight, I believe wholeheartedly that Errol Spence will have a much longer and healthier career than Terence Crawford, because Errol Spence is a fighter that relies heavily on the basics and the fundamentals, right? So when all that athleticism and stuff goes out the window, when you get tired, if you practice the basics, they will stick with you even when you dead tired in the 12th round, right? So let's move on. I said that Errol Spence has a better jab. But one thing, I know we're talking about Errol Spence's strengths, but because we are talking about going up against Terence Crawford, I do want to say one thing that I've noticed, based on his particular fight with Sean Porter, is that Errol Spence's jab can be negated. And the things that I've seen negate Errol Spence's jab is smothering. Kell Brook did that in his fight against Kell Brook. Sean Porter did that by just coming forward with pressure and distance. I've also seen Sean Porter in the earlier rounds against Errol Spence play the distance and make Errol Spence miss a lot of his jabs. So I think that's something that Terence Crawford should definitely keep in mind. I don't know about the smothering too much. That doesn't seem like Terence Crawford's style, but definitely being able to play the distance against Terence Crawford against Errol Spence will definitely serve Terence Crawford well, right? So another one of Spence's strengths, advantages, Spence likes to pin you up against the ropes with his forearms, and he's very good at it, man. Spence is definitely good at neutralizing his opponent's counters, his opponent's offense when they're up against the ropes by using his head to dig into their chest and then using his forearms to pin their shoulders up against the ropes. So he'll dig to the body with the left hand and then have his forearm up against your shoulders to keep you from being able to throw anything back, to keep you from being able to tie up on the inside. Errol Spence is a very prolific fighter. So I definitely think that that's one of the strengths that he has that he could possibly use against Terence Crawford. And I think that in a situation like that, Crawford should definitely look to hold in that situation. We know that although Terence Crawford is a small guy, he is a powerful guy. He is strong. Like, he is physically strong himself. So I'm not sure if he'll be able to do it, but if he can, he should definitely look to tie up Errol Spence on the inside and keep Errol Spence from working. And he should stay away from the high guard. Anybody that has watched my videos before, anybody that has subscribed to Black Code Boxing channel, you already know Tay the Visionary does not like the high guard. No fighter should be fighting in a consistent high guard, especially against somebody like Errol Spence while you're on the ropes. Because Errol Spence is the guy, man. He likes to slap your gloves down, hit you with a left hook. He's going to get inside that high guard. He's going to throw that uppercut. He's going to go to the body. He's going to break you down. And if you got your hands pinned like this, which is something Terence Crawford needs not to do, he is going to break you down. So I advise Terence Crawford, stay off the ropes, stay away from the high guard if possible, right? So another one of Errol Spence's strengths is that he counters the southpaw jab with the pull counter. Again, he's a basic fighter. I've seen him counter the southpaw jab with the pull counter. If you don't know what the pull counter is, that's when you're in your fighting position, you pull straight back, then go ahead with the jab. And Errol Spence has a strong jab, and we've seen him hurt people eye sockets with that damn jab. So that's one of his strengths. I believe that he can use against Terence Crawford, that pull counter, unless Terence Crawford finds a way to time him, which I believe that he has the ability to do. But Terence Crawford needs not take too much damage before he figures that out, right? So let's move on. Physical superiority is just a given, man. Errol Spence is the stronger man. He's a stronger man. I think outside of a training camp, Terence Crawford, the heaviest we've seen him is probably 175. We've seen Errol Spence get up to 185, possibly 190. He's just a big guy, and he has the better inside game, right? So before I go into Errol Spence's weaknesses or disadvantages, right, let's go ahead and go into Terence Crawford's strengths. And I've heard people say, like I said before, I've heard people say Terence Crawford is going to win, and they never give a reason as to why Terence Crawford is going to win. So I have a few strengths that Terence Crawford has that could possibly get him the victory. One is that Crawford throws the 2-1. Now, I know for the boxing fanatics out there, if you guys know anything about boxing, the most basic combination that you could throw is the 1-2. That's the jab and the straight right, depending on how you're fighting. If Terence Crawford is fighting out of southpaw, which I believe he will for majority of his fight, he's going to throw the jab with the right hand, and then he's going to throw the straight left. That would be his 1-2. But the reason I believe the 2-1 is an advantage for Terence Crawford is because Errol Spence, when he blocks punches, he blocks them with the high elbow. So let's say he's fighting out of southpaw, he'll bring his elbow all the way up, right? He'll bring his elbow all the way up to block the 2, right? That Terence Crawford typically throws first. He'll block it, but he turns to the inside. Like, he tries to roll with the punch by turning to the inside, and that's going to open him up to the Terence Crawford jab, right? So when Terence Crawford throws that 2-1, I'm sorry, what did I say? Yeah, that 2-1, he's going to throw that 2, and then he's going to throw that 1. As soon as Errol Spence turns on the inside, he's going to get hit smack dead in the nose with that 2-1 combination. And the thing that makes this 2-1 so deadly for Terence Crawford is that when he throws the 1, the jab after the 2, it kind of turns the jab into like a power jab, right? So I definitely think that that's a punch that Terence Crawford could use to land some good highlight on Errol Spence, some good points in the eyes of the judges. So I don't think that there's much that Errol Spence is going to do to negate that, just because, again, that's something that Errol Spence has practiced since the beginning of his career. So he's not going to be able to get out of that by using the elbow shield. Again, he'll block the 2 with the elbow shield, throwing that elbow up really high, but he'll leave himself open to the Terence Crawford 2-1 on the inside, and he'll leave himself open to the liver shot downstairs. And Terence Crawford has good eyes and good agility, so he'll be able to read that elbow shield and see that the liver is open. That's a disadvantage of using the elbow shield when you're fighting the southpaw. When you're fighting out of southpaw, you leave that liver wide open. And I believe that Crawford would take advantage of that. He's smart enough to take advantage of that. The biggest strength that Terence Crawford has is that he fights off the back foot, man. Terence Crawford fights and counters off the back foot. So we know that Errol Spence is not really a fighter that uses a lot of angles. He's more of a come forward fighter, and he's a go backwards fighter in a linear direction. So with Crawford being able to fight off that back foot, he's definitely going to have room to land those counters, especially with him being the faster fighter. Crawford will land a straight left on Spence, who moves to the right. Spence just typically moves to the right. I don't know if he's going to switch that up in this fight, but if he moves to the right against Terence Crawford, he's definitely going to get hit with some of those straight lefts. What else? Crawford has quick feet, and smothering makes it hard to corner Crawford. Again, Crawford is able to fight off the back foot, but another one of his huge strengths in his fight is that he has good athleticism. He has quick feet. He's like a cat in the ring. It's very difficult to put Crawford in a corner. So I know that Errol Spence is going to try to spam that jab to do that. If Errol Spence cannot put Crawford in a corner and keep him there, then he's going to have a very difficult time actually landing to the body on Terence Crawford. And I don't believe that Errol Spence can win this fight from the outside. I truly don't believe that he can win this fight from the outside. He's going to have to get to the inside to beat Terence Crawford. So another one of Terence Crawford's strengths is that he has the faster hands. I already mentioned how he's the better counter puncher, in my opinion. And last but not least, he has the better outside game. He's going to have to negate that Spence jab and hit Errol Spence with some of those counters, because Errol Spence tends to be front foot heavy whenever he throws some of his shots, whenever he throws that straight left hand, right? So with that being said, let's get into some of the weaknesses of both of these fighters, and then I'm going to top it off with my opinion on who I actually think wins this fight. Some of the weaknesses that Errol Spence has is that, again, he uses that elbow shield, leaving his liver open, and blinds himself to the southpaw Crawford power jab, right? Because he throws that 2-1, like I said before. Spence can't fight off the back foot. That's known. One thing I do notice is that Spence has two approaches that he'll go when somebody's attacking him. He'll either take a step back and do the pull counter, or he'll just take two big steps back and just hop out of range, right, from being hit. But normally he doesn't use angles. He doesn't do check left hooks, check right hooks and turn off the angle and things like that to make his opponent misses. He literally just goes straight back. He'll shell up, or he'll do a pull counter. So I think that's going to be one of his weaknesses against somebody like Terence Crawford, somebody who's very good at using angles, right? Spence shows up when he's hit with a high volume of punches, leaving him open around the high guard. Again, Spence, he does rely heavily on that high guard sometimes. He does a good job of keeping his hands pinned up really tight up to his forehead, But again, you're going against an intelligent fighter that can read that. It's too many openings to the high guard. You in your high guard like this, I can hit you here, I can hit you in your ribs, in your liver, whatever the case may be. It's just too many openings with that, and I think that'll help Terence Crawford score more points. And Terence Crawford, again, he's ambidextrous as far as I know, so he has power in both hands. So a high guard is not a defensive maneuver you want to use against somebody like Terence Crawford. Errol Spence has bad head movement. I'm not going to say he has bad head movement. He just doesn't have a lot of head movement. And I don't really think that's good against a fighter who has fast hands. Now, I did just recently watch the Kell Brook fight. And one thing I noticed about Errol Spence, even though he lacks a lot of head movement, one way he avoids taking shots to the face is that after he throws his jab, he will immediately lower his level to get inside and start working the body. Immediately. So it's hard to counter Errol Spence upstairs because as soon as he throws that jab, he ducks in, bow, 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 and he starts attacking you to the body instantly. So I definitely think that Terence Crawford should keep that in mind and definitely look to target the body whenever he's throwing his counters. All right, guys, I'm back. My bad, I had to take a quick intermission. All right, so the last weakness I have for Errol Spence is that he is front foot heavy when he throws the backhand, when he throws that two, which is what I believe will leave him open against Terence Crawford when Terence Crawford takes that step back and he throws that counter uppercut. We've seen Errol Spence be very front foot heavy against Yordenis Ugas. And I just feel like that's one of those habits that Errol Spence is definitely going to have to work on if he wants to win this fight, and not be down on the scorecards. I don't think something like that may not come out. I don't know. Terence Crawford has power, but we don't know. We know Errol Spence has a chin, but I definitely think that that being front foot heavy will not serve him well against a backwards moving counter puncher like Terence Crawford, right? So now, let's move on to Terence Crawford's weaknesses. And we're gonna top it off with this. So, I think that one of Terence Crawford's biggest weaknesses isn't necessarily inside the ring, but it's outside the ring. And that's the fact that Terence Crawford is 35 years of age, going on 36, right? I just feel like that may show up in the ring, and if it shows up in the ring, then Terence Crawford is not going to win the fight. Like, I hate to say it that way, but that's just what it is. If Terence Crawford shows up as a 36-year-old fighter, it's not going to end well for him against a power puncher like Errol Spence. And I know y'all say Errol Spence is 32, so he's not far behind. But again, I still look at 32 years of age as the last year in your prime. So Errol Spence is technically still in his prime. Terence Crawford is not, right? Which is kind of why it's kind of annoying with the whole let me clear my side of the street thing, because we already knew that Terence Crawford was about 3-4 years older than Errol Spence. So it almost feels like he was waited out a little bit just until he was out of his prime a little bit. And I honestly feel like if this fight would have happened 5 years ago, 2018 or whatever the case may be, then we would see a complete Terence Crawford. But I'm not sure that we'll see that. I'm hoping that we do. Another thing is that Crawford doesn't have the pace for inside fighting. So that's going to be one of his weaknesses in this fight. We've definitely seen Terence Crawford have a good inside game, but the fact of the matter is, it's just not better than Errol Spence's. And we do not need to see Terence Crawford take that type of punishment. He's not going to be able to keep up the athleticism if he's getting hurt to the body or he's taking big shots to the orbital bone or whatever the case may be, right? I've seen Terence Crawford shell up against pressure. He can be peeled. And what I mean by peeled is if he got his hands up here, again, Errol Spence is a guy who will peel your hands down, peel them down, hit you with big hooks, right? Terence Crawford can be peeled and he can be framed up to be hit with some good body shots, right? And that'll prevent him from doing them counters. So if Terence Crawford, again, if he shells up, if he does that high guard, which I've seen him do on the inside against Errol Spence, it's not going to look pretty for him. So he needs to stay away from that high guard, stay away from leaning on the ropes, stay away from being framed up to where he can't use his counter punch, right? Stay away from the corner altogether. Crawford is definitely going to need to be able to use his feet in this fight. Another weakness that he has is that Crawford is emotional. That's just what it is, man. You cannot be emotional against a guy like Errol Spence. You cannot go in there with a chip on your shoulder, right? Trying to prove this macho man point. You need to just focus on winning the fight, making them miss, making them pay. Don't try to go in there dog for dog, because even though Terence Crawford is a dog, it's just not. Errol Spence is just a bigger dog physically. You get what I'm saying? And a harder puncher. So you don't go in there need to try to prove yourself. I definitely think that Terence Crawford needs to hurt Errol Spence, but it doesn't need to be at a 50-50, right? It needs to be him on the outside, hitting him with them counters and hurting him that way. But not trying to beat Spence at his own game. Another disadvantage for Crawford is that Crawford is a slow starter. With him being a slow starter, if he takes too much damage early, remember I told you, Errol Spence is going to come out the gate trying to make Terence Crawford work, because him and Derrick James are dependent on Terence Crawford's age to play a factor in Terence Crawford slowing down in this fight. So with Terence Crawford being a slow starter, that's not going to be good for him with Errol Spence's game plan to come out early and him starting slow. If he takes too much damage too early, he's not going to have the confidence needed to come back and win the fight, right? Unless he just pull that dog out of him and just hurt Errol Spence, right? But again, I wouldn't depend on things like that. So if I was Errol Spence, if I was Terence Crawford, I would definitely expect Errol to come out early and just start getting that respect early by hitting him with some big shots and playing the distance, but also not trying to let him run you around the ring and let him get you tired, right? What else? So with that being said, I did want to say one more thing, man. Spence will have been out the ring for 15 months at the start of this fight. So even though I really think that Errol Spence and Derrick James' game plan is for Errol Spence to come out fast, come out early, and trying to hit Crawford with big shots, I don't know how that's going to play out. You know what I mean? I did give Errol Spence 2 rounds to fill him out, but with a 15-month layoff, come on, man. You might see some of that ring rust within a few rounds. So that may give Terence Crawford the time that he needs to kind of pick up the pace and figure Errol Spence out. So that if the first few rounds could go either way. But again, I am expecting Errol Spence to come out early, right? With that being said, man, that's the end of this video. And I know you all been waiting on my fight prediction. This is a 50-50 fight, man. But I'm going to give my prediction, and I'm going to say that the winner of this fight is going to be Terence Crawford. I have Terence Crawford winning this fight on 2 conditions. Really 1 condition, but 2 conditions. 1 condition. He has to have his athleticism. That's it. If Terence Crawford has shown any signs of slowing down, any signs of aging in this fight, then he's going to lose the fight and he may get stopped, right? Because again, Terence Crawford is a spectacular fighter, right? But he is not a fundamental fighter. He is not as technical as Errol Spence is. Terence Crawford relies heavily on his athleticism, and as you age, those things start to fail you. Look at Roy Jones, for example. When Roy Jones was younger, he was very athletic. But it's easier to make mistakes if you're always dependent on your athleticism. Your mind may be fast, but your body can't keep up with your mind once you get to a certain point, right? So I think that I am going with Terence Crawford to win, but that's that's based on him looking like he has his last few fights. If he still has the athleticism that he had 2 fights ago against Sean Porter, then I definitely see Terence Crawford pulling out the victory. If that athleticism fails him, I give the fight to Errol Spence by stoppage, by TKO. But yeah, other than that, I definitely see Terence Crawford winning this fight on points and a possible TKO. Possibly. We've seen Errol Spence hurt. I've seen him hurt against Kell Brook. I've seen him get stunned against Ugas and Sean Porter. Kell Brook busted up his mouth. So Errol Spence isn't invincible. It's just that the fundamentals are so sharp with him and so instilled into him, it's going to be hard to get through that defense. So that's what I got for y'all today. If you all enjoyed this breakdown, please hit that like button. Please give me a comment. Please hit that subscribe button so we can get into bringing you more content like this and then inevitably doing this full time. So peace. Much love, Boxing Universe. Until the next one, we out.